Good evening, everyone. This is Dawn White again. I'm here in Cumberland County. You might have seen the story that we did earlier today that was published about a dog in Cumberland County that was along Cottage Court in Silver Spring Township. The dog was found dead on a day where it was in the mid-90s outside. That was on July 2nd. Silver Spring Township Police are investigating along with the Cumberland County dog officer, and no charges have been filed yet, but this is an ongoing investigation, so it's very likely that charges may come in the future. So a lot of you may be wondering, with Libre's law, what is legal, what is not legal. And for more on this, I am joined now by Jessica Blouch. There we go.
Hi.
And Jessica is the founder of Justice for Libre. So in this case, police believe the dog was not tethered, so that wouldn't fall under the tethering part of Libre's law. But when they arrived, a neighbor had called to report a neglected dog. The police arrived there and the dog was already dead. So under the aggravated cruelty section of Libre's law, how could that apply in this case?
Well, that could apply. I just say the differences between the old laws and now that the new laws are passed. If charges are filed, that could have been a summary offense previously, but now that we have Libre's law in place, those charges could range anywhere from a misdemeanor to felony.
Are you good? Gail Geyer asked what happened. So again, on July 2nd, police were called to a home along Cottage Court in Silver Spring Township for a report of a neglected dog. When they arrived there, they found the dog deceased, a pit bull. So an investigation is underway right now.
Right. So this dog was left out in the heat. Anybody with common sense should know, even if the dog wasn't tethered, that those aren't conditions conducive to life. You know, you wouldn't leave your toddler outside in 95-degree weather for hours on end. You wouldn't do that to yourself. So this dog was left in conditions that eventually, sadly, resulted in bodily injury that caused its death. That's neglect. I mean, the neighbors even noticed that this dog was in distress, but the owners didn't. So the aggravated cruelty, so the tethering laws wouldn't apply because the dog wasn't tethered. And, but still, you know, the dog was neglected. It wasn't in conditions where it had water, appropriate shelter, and it suffered. And heat stroke is an extremely slow, painful way for an animal to die. So, you know, now that we have these strict laws, the penalties are going to be much harsher if they do file charges.
So the other part of Libre's law, the hot weather portion of Libre's law that is if an animal's tethered, could you explain that part?
Yes. Libre's law, with the part of the law that involves tethering and weather, is that a dog cannot be tethered outside for more than 30 minutes when the temperature is under 32 degrees or above 90 degrees. Unfortunately, at this time that doesn't apply to dogs that are outside and not tethered, but obviously that says something. If it's illegal to leave your dog tied to something, what's the difference? You know, it's not right to leave them outside where they're not physically, you know, tied to something. It's still not safe. It's still not conditions that are humane. And in this case, sadly, the dog lost its life.
What message would you have to dog owners? We're in the middle of summer right now, about leaving your dog outside when it's hot or in a hot car.
Don't do it. Don't do it. You know, in this case, it doesn't appear that it was a case where the dog just was outside for potty break. This dog had to be outside for hours. Same applies to a hot car, except for it doesn't take hours for the temperature to rise. To leave them at home. You know, if you're not going to keep your dog safe and keep them indoors when the weather is extreme and it's not safe for them to be outside, then don't have a dog. If you're going to run to the store and the temperatures are bad, leave your dog at home. I mean, it really is common sense. Anybody who's reasonable would understand that those conditions aren't humane, they're not safe, and that you can it can result in losing your pet, first of all, and second of all, it can result in some serious charges. They're not going to be summary charges anymore. It's not going to be just a ticket or a slap on the wrist like you ran a stop sign. You could be charged with a felony, as you should. If you were neglectful to the point that your dog suffers an awful death, you should be held accountable. And thankfully, we're seeing more and more now with Libre's law that people are being held accountable.
And with the third-degree felony,
yes.
If someone's convicted of that, that could be years in prison.
Absolutely. Years in prison, heavy fines. That's going to affect you for the rest of your life. It's going to be in your record, employment. So if nothing else, if you don't care enough about your animal to keep them safe, to keep them comfortable, then at least think about the fact that this could affect you for the rest of your life. It'll follow you around. You can't get away from that once you're convicted of felony. So hopefully it's a deterrent. I'd like to think everybody loves their dogs. It keeps them inside and never lets them, out in the extreme weather. But hopefully that it deters people who don't think like me.
And as the founder of Justice for Libre, you deal with a lot of situations where there's animal neglect. How common do you see this happening, where people are leaving dogs outside in really cold weather or warm weather, or leaving them in cars and something bad happens?
Often. Sadly, we've seen so many this year. It almost feels like every day if you don't know something personally that happened locally, you'll read about it. And the dogs in the hot cars, you would think by now that people, every year, you see so many dogs suffer and die that you think people would get it by now. But it never fails. And I think now we're hearing, because of the laws also, and I think that law enforcement and people in general are taking it more seriously, instead of just walking past a car when they see a dog, on a hot day. People are starting to really take notice, and when they do call the authorities, they're taking it more seriously. So I think that we're hearing about it a lot more because of that too. Just like this case here, this obviously wasn't a dog in a car, but it was a dog outside in the extreme heat. It's nice to see law enforcement investigating this, more and more. It's not nice to hear the stories and realize this is still happening so much, but it is nice to see that something's being done about it and it's not being, let go.
Yeah, and then Christine Clark says, common sense people, you wouldn't put your kids out in the heat. A dog is just as important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you wouldn't put your children out, in a hot yard. So think about the fact that a dog, that would be like putting your child out in the yard in a fur coat. It's not, I'm not saying that it's, worse or better to leave either out in the heat, but, dogs can't cool themselves like we do. So, I can't imagine being outside when it's 95 degrees and wearing a winter jacket. It's just complete common sense.
Yeah, and Ronald Walsh thinks we're on the road. We're not on the road. We're on the sidewalk, so no worries. It may look like the road, but thank you very much, Jessica, for joining us and giving a little bit more information about Libre's law and hot weather. And for those of you who just tuned in, what happened was Silver Spring Township Police, along with the Cumberland County dog officer, they are investigating a case that happened on July 2nd. If you remember, that day was in the mid-90s. They got a call from neighbors at a home, and there was a report of a dog that was being neglected, that was left outside along Cottage Court in Silver Spring Township. By the time the police got there, the dog had already passed away. And just talking to Jessica here about the hot weather portion of Libre's law, what's legal, what's not legal, and make sure to monitor PennLive. We will update this story as it evolves. The officer does expect the investigation to be wrapped up soon, and we will keep you updated on that. Have a good evening, everyone.